then like you got to this point where it's like, okay, we're just off the reservation here in terms of just, you know, when you 1 week in and someone's like, here's my 450 million DPS build that
Fix your game.
the pinnacle boss for 141 million damage and one shots in the 3-player party, and I'm like, oh, well, where are we? Like, what happened?
The thing that I found a little bit sad, and I guess we should have just expected this, is that like I sort of expected that the first few times people were playing the pinnacle boss, that would kind of be a normal fight. But in reality, the first few times people played the pinnacle boss was just completely like a disaster because like they just had some build that was because to get to the pinnacle boss the fastest, you also had to have like a ridiculously broken thing going on, and so you just ended up with just like like you don't even get to see the mechanics.
The rich get richer.
Like, that was a bit sad to me.
Well, hopefully with more lives, people will actually be giving it a shot instead of just selling it off to those people who do one-shot it. But we'll see how that goes. But
the tricky thing about this has just been that, like, okay, so we do generally want to not do mid-league nerfs, and there was a period there before Christmas where we were making some changes, but we weren't even considering those to be mid-league nerfs because they still left things in a state that was still like very, very good. Like from our perspective, and like maybe the players would disagree with this, it was kind of like when we nerfed something there, we were still leaving it in a state where it's still some of the best shit ever. And so from our perspective, we were like, well, there'd be no reason to have to re-roll your character after this change because like it's still crazy. So we didn't even really consider those to be mid-league nerfs in the same way. But then, obviously there's going to have to be some changes because, like, you know, there are just certain things that are just completely ridiculous. But one thing we've got now, and I kind of mentioned it in the video, is that, like, we actually have an understanding now of, like, what a character should look like. And so ideally, when we do our first, like, true balance patch, we should be at the point where we can be like, okay, here's, like, these like 10 things that need to come down, but then there's also like these other 50 things that need to come up to get to that point, right? So like ideally it sort of there should be a little bit of leveling there that occurs, but we really don't want to do that kind of patch without doing an economy reset because we actually need like to see what really happens when you get a new economy and all that sort of stuff. So and when I say an economy reset, of course what I mean is a new league. Like you'll still have the old characters if you want to play them, but all the stuff we're going to be looking at will be on the new economy that you know, in terms of like how it evolves that way. So yeah, that's going to be like a tricky one. It'll take us a little bit longer. But that is also what we're working on in the background as well, is just like getting all of this stuff to where it needs to be.
So am I hearing that there's no nerfs coming in this patch then? Is that sort of what I'm taking from this?
I mean, there might be a few that relate to things that are just completely screwed, but I mean, it is not our intention to do a big nerf patch here. Like, that is not our goal. Our goal with this is, like, fix things that are annoying people and, like, make the game more playable. Whereas the goal of, like, the sort of balance patch that's coming a little later would be like, okay, we'll have a new economy. We'll actually do like a proper balance pass where we get all of that stuff like more.
Because you scared everyone with that executioner photo in the Twitter post. I mean, it looked like the guillotine was about to drop.
Okay, yeah, people look at
should have been a nerf
a little bit too much. Okay,
Jesus.
Kind of three kinds of nerfs going on. Not on this patch. Just hold on. That was.
I do want to follow up though with the comment on the balance patch coming later, and you want to combine that with the economy resets. So is that you saying that there will be economy resets during early access on a regular basis?
Yeah, so there won't be. They'll be in a new league, so you still get to keep your old characters. But effectively, yeah, absolutely during early access there'll be new. Leagues. What I don't want to say is like whether or not the league as so when I use the word league, people sort of assume that means there's like a league mechanic that comes along with it. And we might do that or we might not. We kind of need to work out what's going on there. But it'll be a new league in the sense that it's a new economy that people can play through, and we'll be introducing significant stuff that would want people to make people replay as well as doing all the balance stuff and all that sort of stuff. But effectively we need to do that because if you can't really just make changes to balance like significant ones without screwing people's characters over, obviously. So you need to have some kind of thing like that in order to be able to do that.
Just going back quickly, we have a kind of few classifications of things we do address when it does impact balance, and we are trying to be ultra conservative, but if it is bricking instances, as in it is just absolutely tanking instances, affecting the performance and thus affecting the performance for other users, we almost always have to address it. You can't just let that be. Now we obviously try and reduce the impact on the server, generally because of some sort of infinite loop or anything of the sort like that, or you know, something happening per frame that shouldn't happen, and all of a sudden now, you know,
like if you're getting the server frame rate to be like 1 FPS, then that is not alright, right? Like we have to actually sort that. So that is something that we will do a address. but ideally in such a way where it still leaves the build perfectly viable.
Yeah.
It's just that it's no longer completely destroying
And
what's going on.
the other things where it does nerf and has an impact is, of course, when there is simply something clearly not working intended. So, like an example of that, which I won't try and pronounce, but the shield that increases effect of your socketed runes and soul cores.
Moxawatl.
And that was just obviously applying to all of them, not the one socketed in itself.
What?
That is obviously a nerf. It was never meant to work that way. I don't think that really surprises anyone when that gets changed. It's very clearly not working as intended.
Fucking exploiters.
Those two we're generally just going to pull the trigger on almost always.
Right.
We're still thinking like, okay, especially in the performance case, that's like blatantly, our fault, and there is economy there, and then obviously there are people who are going to lose their character builds because of it. Maybe, hopefully not. We try and
build around
obviously
exploit.
bring down the frequency or the infinite loop element or the per frame while also buffing the damage. And then we make a note of it to like reassess this later when there's a new economy, and we'll come back and reassess that. But, often protecting the instances, protecting the server performance for other users, and obviously fixing bugs are, something we're going to do. And so that can have an impact. But just like at this point, preferably for all the other main nerfs where you're just blatantly nerfing someone's build or nerfing a build, we're trying to currently push that towards the, economy / league reset kind of point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. It's a very extensive answer. I appreciate that. That's one of the things that makes this very fun for us to do. We ask a question, then we just lean back and let you guys do your thing. I love it. We are going to circle back to what you mentioned as well earlier, Mark. You said coming back to reassess a decision that's been made. And the topic we're going to open up is the two-step verification, security for accounts with certain things that's happened recently.
Oh, shit.
So the real question that we come down to with everything that's going down is, I guess the first one is, what's your data breach at GGG?
All right.
And following that up with, are you going to reassess the decision?
Oh, was it? Let's find out. Or are these guys lying?
So this is unfortunately really sucks, and I was really hoping we'd get a post about this before we did this interview, but unfortunately we haven't quite finished assessing yet. So there has been a situation where someone got access to an admin account on our website, and we now understand how that happened. And we also understand, we don't fully understand the scope of everything that occurred here, but we're sort of in the process of like looking at logs and so on. And there was a few really shitty things that occurred here that I'm very unhappy about. So the first one, just to say this, is that the thing that happened here was actually kind of the same thing that happened a while ago when through a Steam, effectively a Steam account was compromised through Steam support. So effectively what happened is one of our administrator accounts had a Steam account associated with it, and this was a Steam account that the person who had it attached didn't really kind of know. I mean, obviously they could have checked, but like they didn't really consider the fact that this was like this old Steam account that they don't even use anymore was attached to their admin account. And so effectively what happened was that got compromised through Steam support. So I don't know like all the details exactly what happens there, but effectively what happens is that like they are able to somehow provide like details that they managed to find on someone, like the last 4 digits of their credit card information or whatever, they get through some other kind of means, and then they provide enough information to Steam support.
Social engineering.
Where they're able to get Steam to change the credentials on the account, which happened without us noticing, because once again this was an account that this person doesn't log into, so there was no they didn't realize that this has occurred. And then another thing. This was compounded by the fact, and this one was really, really crap, that whenever a customer support person makes a change to an account, they there's like an audit log, right, of like all the actions, like the events that they've done. And this effectively means that like when we investigate like, hey, what's happening with this account that got compromised, like we obviously look at the events and see like, hey, was there anything, like what happened here, right? Did someone change a password? Was something going on with that? And there was actually a bug where the event for setting a new password on an account was incorrectly in the back end labeled as a note rather than like an audit event.
Yeah.
And what that meant was that notes are things that like customer service can add to people's accounts, and they can edit them and delete them. And so the password change thing, being a note, could be deleted by a customer service person accidentally rather than being rather than being permanently there in a way that no one could change. And so that effectively meant that what was happening is the person who managed to get an account, they were compromising the accounts by setting a random password, then deleting the node afterwards to say that that had happened. And so when we would look at accounts, we just wouldn't see this. And so it was like really not obvious to us that